Is West Virginia a nomad program? Is it a program that is going to have to build its roster every single year with the transfer portal? And are the days of building West Virginia football with high school recruits behind us? That's what we're going to talk about in this episode of Couz's Corner, which is brought to you by Cats, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner, and Appalachia Digital. And we're going to have that conversation, and I'm going to give you my thoughts on it right after this word from one of those sponsors. Since 1931, the attorneys at Cats, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner have been the voice for victims who have suffered serious injury or death. They have a fierce passion for truth and justice and a sincere compassion for those who have been wronged by others. Whether you have been in a car accident or fighting with an insurance company, or you or a loved one has suffered serious injury or death due to medical negligence, we will ensure your voice is heard loud and clear. Cats, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner will ensure there is justice for all West Virginians because we are your lawyer, your voice. Visit us at yourlawyeryourvoice.com. What is up, and welcome into another episode of Couz's Corner. I'm your host, Couz, and you have landed yourself at the home of top shelf college football news and analysis around the West Virginia Mountaineers, the Big 12, and conference realignment. On tap in today's show, we're talking about West Virginia and if they are a, quote, nomad program. I got the idea of this video from a former high school classmate and teammate of mine, Sam, and named Sam. And some of you may remember Sam. Some of you West Virginia fans, he used to run a podcast called the 304 Podcast. And he and I were having a discussion through DMs, and he brought this to my attention. I thought, man, this is a really good idea. But he feels like that West Virginia is going to be, he called it a nomad program. They're going to have to be a team who's built around the transfer portal. When you look at what the fact West Virginia typically doesn't have very many Power 4 level high school players come out every year. I mean, you can count them on one hand most years because it's a small state with a small population. So there aren't a ton of P4 level players in the state. They have to rely on recruiting the surrounding states like Ohio, Pennsylvania, Virginia, Maryland, and others. And there are a lot of competition in those states. You're facing teams like Ohio State, Penn State, Pitt, Virginia Tech, UVA, Maryland, just to name a few. Cincinnati's now a competitor in that space. So does West Virginia need to focus more on bringing in portal players every year? And is that the method Rich Rodriguez is doing? Now, when you look at the transfers, West Virginia is losing 26 transfers off of last year's football team. They went out and got 31 transfers. And what makes me think that Rich Rod is going to look at a win now mentality and not focus as much on high school players is the fact when you look at those 31 transfers incoming transfers, 23 of them only have 1 year of eligibility remaining. I talked about that in a video a couple weeks ago. 23 of 31 transfers have only 1 year of college eligibility. So he went out and recruited a bunch of grown men. He went out and recruited a bunch of seniors, a bunch of guys who've played a lot of college football, whether it be at the FCS level, the G5 level, the P4 level, and in some cases, the D2 level. He got experience. He got guys who are, physically developed, 22, 23, even 24-year-olds, maybe even 25-year-olds in a case or two. He got a bunch of grown men. Is that how West Virginia is going to have to be successful? That's what Sam seems to think. And I'm starting to lean that way. I mean, when you look at West Virginia's past teams, even under Neal Brown, for example, starting in 2022 through this year, which I know that, we're going through a coaching change now, so obviously the transfer numbers could be much higher. But even looking at the years under Neal Brown, 2022, let's go back that far. I went back 4 years. Neal Brown lost 25 players off the 2022 team and only brought in 12. So he was trying to build he was looking mainly to build with high school talent, right? 2023, 21 outgoing transfers, 14 incoming. Again, had to rely a lot on high school players to fill that gap. 2024, they lost 25 players to the portal, brought in 13. So every year, Neal Brown lost at least 20 players to the transfer portal, 20 plus guys. Now, not all of those guys were stars. Not all of those guys were even able to play at the P4 level. But you did lose guys in that time frame. You lost guys like Isaiah Esdale, Akeem Messador, Caden Prather, Winston Wright, Josh Chandler Samedo, Nick Troy Fortune, Sam Brown, Tony Mathis, Reese Smith, Jared Bartlett, Traylon Ray, Hudson Clement, C.J. Donaldson, just to name a few. All of those are guys who started football games for West Virginia the year before they transferred. Many of them went on to play well and have success at their next stop. And all of those guys I mentioned were recruited out of high school by West Virginia, either by Dana Holgorsen or by Neal Brown himself. But they didn't stick around. So West Virginia can go out, recruit a player out of high school that's talented, develop him for 1 to 2 years, get him really good. He can put up good numbers at West Virginia, have success. But then what's going to happen? Yes, this is Ohio State. I would like to bring C.J. Donaldson to Columbus. Yes, this is LSU. I would like for Jordan Jefferson to come play for us. Yes, this is Florida State. Winston Wright, come on down. Those are just a few examples of West Virginia losing guys who, now, there might have been some of those guys who weren't culture fits. Some of the Dana Holgorsen guys may not have been culture fits. I get that. But that still doesn't change the point. West Virginia is developing players for them just to be taken by the Power 2 in a lot of cases, primarily at the skill positions. Look at all the wide receivers I named, several defensive backs I named. And you look at the last 2 to 3 seasons, West Virginia's had to fill the defensive back room with almost exclusively transfers every single year for the last 3 seasons. Almost every time they get a defensive back that's good, they leave. And then the other ones haven't panned out. They've missed on some guys through the portal and through high school. Hopefully Rich Rod can correct that. He went out and got a bunch of older DBs to come in. All of them will be able to compete to play this year. But guess what he's going to have to do? He's going to have to do the exact same thing after the 2025 season, because he's going to have a bunch of guys graduating with no eligibility left. But that tells me that's Rich Rod's plan, at least in the short term, because I think he understands it. He sees it. He says, you know what? West Virginia used to be a developmental program. We brought guys in as freshmen. We developed them. By the time they were seniors, we had a good football team. Those days are over. Those days are over, at least for certain positions. What I'll call the high money position, the big money positions like wide receiver, edge rusher, defensive back, maybe even quarterback. I mean, Neal Brown had one quarterback in his entire 6 years that started, who was a guy out, well, 2 counting Nico. But he only had one who started the season as a starter, who he had recruited out of high school. The rest all had to be transfers, starting with Austin Kendall, then Jarrett Daggy, then JT Daniels. All 3 were transfers. You can go back to Dana Holgorsen. After Geno Smith left, he struggled to find a quarterback. He had to bring in transfers. Skyler Howard, Clint Trickett, Will Greer. Hey, do me a favor. Go check out my good friends over at Appalachia Digital. If you need a brand new website for your small business, or if you're just looking to get found easier on Google, go check out appalachiadigital.com/Couz. These are the fine folks who designed my brand new website over at wvsportschat.com. They did a fantastic job. I love their work. I think you will too. So go check them out. appalachiadigital.com/Couz. Let them know Couz sent you. I also want to thank them for supporting my work here at Couz's Corner and at Hoops from the Hills. Now let's get back to the show. West Virginia has to rely on the transfer portal for a lot of their key positions. Now, running back, they've had success with Letty Brown, C.J. Donaldson, Jaheim White. Offensive lineman, Zach Frazier, Wyatt Milam, just to name a couple. Guys that have been good right out of high school. Defensive line even, Sean Martin has had some success. Dante Steele, Darius Steele. But heck, even last year when you look at the D-line, T.J. Jackson was the most productive from a statistical standpoint. He was a transfer. Fatorma Mobile was a transfer. You go back the previous year, Jordan Jefferson was a transfer. So even at the D-line, they're having to rely on transfers in a lot of cases. At linebacker, they've had to rely on some transfers. Reed Carrico, for example. Lee Koba a couple years ago. So West Virginia, it looks like they might be in a position where they're going to have to make their hay, so to speak, in the transfer portal. And Rich Rod's going to have to be an ace at finding guys who are so diamonds in the rough, so to speak, who might be under-recruited or underappreciated, that he doesn't have to pay a ton of NIL money. Now, he is going to have some NIL money to spend. He was able to go out and get Jamori Robinson from UTSA, the Defensive Player of the Year from that conference. He was able to go get Michael Coach Jr., the defensive back who was highly coveted out of Nevada. Several other guys that you can name. But for the most part, West Virginia, in my opinion, is going to have to rely on the transfer portal. Now, you do have guys like Nico. You have guys like Rodney Gallagher, Jaheim White that have stuck around. And you're always going to have a few of those guys. So high school recruiting still has to be a part of what you do. But my point being, West Virginia needs to rely on the portal, in my opinion, to be successful in this new era of college sports. Sprinkle in 10 to 12 high school recruits every year, and the rest should probably be transfers. But you can't miss on many of those transfers. That's the thing. You have to be excellent at your evaluations out of the portal, or have a crap ton of NIL money. And even then, you still got to be picky because you don't want to bring guys in that are going to ruin your locker room. You still have to vet guys and make sure they fit your culture and your locker room. So you've got to be careful who you pay the money to. You don't want to bring in energy suckers, as some people like to call it. I think Neal Brown used that word. But anyway, let me know what you think in the comment section. Do you think West Virginia needs to be a, quote, nomad program to be successful in the Big 12 going forward? Or do you think they still need to be a developmental program? Now, Neal Brown has continued to say throughout his tenure, this is still a developmental program. I'm not sure that was the right approach. Based on how Rich Rod's starting, it looks like he's going the opposite approach. Will it work? We will see. But I want to hear your thoughts in the comment section. Also want to remind you to please give a thumbs up to this video if you like it. Please share this video with your family and friends, and please subscribe to Couz's Corner and support what I'm doing here on the channel. I want to give a shout out to my VIP channel members of this episode. They are Hellbilly, Denny Allen, Tom Dean, Shaggy of West Virginia, and Daniel Gigax. Thank you all for being supporters. If you want to be a VIP member, hit the join button below or go to my channel homepage and hit it over there beside my profile picture. There are 2 levels you can join. There are perks, including the random shout-outs. Also, I want to remind you to check out this video in the corner of your screen. YouTube says you'll like it. There's also one right here from my basketball channel, Who's from the Hills. A lot of stuff going on there with the coaching search. Check out this one if you're interested. Another shout-out to my sponsors, Cat Scanner, Stone Street and Buckner, and Appalachia Digital. Hope the rest of your day is top shelf. Thanks for watching. Q Country Roads.